I'm Judith Neil. I have been acting here in this theatre since 1971, just after I emigrated to New Zealand from London, England.
I'm Hugh Neil. I got involved with the Theatre Royal first in 1974, roughly 6 weeks after I emigrated from UK.
I think it was a charity type or fundraising thing for the Sea Cadets. They wanted to do a production of Peter Pan here in the theatre, but I was asked the second day I arrived in 1971 to play Peter Pan, because my sister, who had already emigrated and was living here, she knew I had had a bit of experience. Because in London, where they did Peter Pan every Christmas in West End theatres, but it was always played by a female, never played by a male. And it was a fantastic experience.
My first experience was, as I say, soon after I arrived in Nelson from the UK. There was an advertisement in the Nelson Mail. Actors wanted for A Man for All Seasons, so I got a part. And then, as often happens, one man dropped out. So I wouldn't say it was a bigger part, but it was a more important part. I got the part of the young Henry VIII. He only appears in the play in one scene, but it's a big scene. That was my first experience, and as I said, I loved it. And it was through theatre that Judith and I met.
I was watching A Man for All Seasons. I was just nodding off because it was a little bit boring. And then suddenly this lively piece of energy came on stage in rather high heels. And I woke up and I thought, oh, who's that? He's new. Never seen him before. Wow. Energy plus. Lovely. And I really enjoyed the rest of the performance, but Hugh wasn't in it very much. First time I ever saw him. Didn't know who he was at all, but it woke me up from boredom and it impressed me.
And there was quite an old actor. He was playing Cardinal Wolsey, and I remember him standing in the wings. JR would freak out listening to this. He held a candle, and it was right by one of the legs, and he went whoosh,
Up the curtain.
And the look of horror on his face, and luckily it extinguished by the time it got to the top. But anyway, he was already in rehearsal for The Importance of Being Earnest. There's two servants who appear, manservants who appear in The Importance of Being Earnest. I played one of them, Merriman, and Judith happened to be one of the main female leads, and that's how we met. And the rest, as they say, is history.
There's been too many to remember. It's been so many, I mean, I can't even count how many.
One that really sticks in my mind, because I think it made a huge difference as far as raising the bar, as far as not only acting, but the production values were concerned, and that was Noises Off, which Brian Aitken directed, and we were both in that. And that was, because before then, you used to have a prompt. You used to sit up there, because in those days we only had about 4 lights, but it made you unconsciously lazy. There were some terrible performances with just quadraphonic prompting, and including a lot of the men were getting on in years, and they couldn't hear the prompt. And so they'd say, "What? What was that?" Which made it even worse. So Brian said, "No, we're not having prompts," and that was a shock to a lot of us.
It was
but
our first
it just really raised the standard. Plus, it was the first time any of us had had a professional director.
Yeah.
And it made a big difference. Another role that I have very fond memories of, I don't know if you know the play Peter Shaffer, Amadeus, and I played the role of Mozart. and it was just the character suited me really. Snotty little shit, basically. And I did feel that part was just right. I hardly had to act. You know, it's just me.
There were plays that we felt we wanted to put on, and other people said, oh no, we can't do that. So we resigned from committee and we started our own theatre company, just Hugh and myself. We could do the plays that we wanted to do. We had, how many years? About 10 years? We put on a lot of very successful
12 years,
productions.
I think.
Yeah, yeah. Mostly in the theatre, until, of course, the theatre was closed for the work to be done. Then we did a lot at the Playhouse, or wherever we could.
I think it was about 2004 from memory, I may have got that wrong, when the theatre was getting to such a stage that it was no longer going to get a license to continue to operate. And so a few of us, including Steve Thomas and myself, Annabel Norman, who at that time was director of the Arts Festival, Greg Shaw of Everyman Records, a few of us thought, this building is too valuable a building to allow to fall into disrepair. And Repertory were in an impossible situation of trying to maintain the theatre and at the same time put on plays. A few of us, we realised that if things were left as they were, the building would be demolished. There were already letters in the paper, you know, demolish the place. It's an eyesore. And so we thought, well, what we needed to do was form a trust. And so there was a big meeting of all the members of Repertory, and it was a lot of acrimony, accusations of ulterior motives by some, which directed at me. My view is, you know, the theatre is bigger than any of us. And so finally, there was a vote, and Repertory agreed to sell the building for $10 to the trust, and that was in some ways the easy part.
What do you call it, a rabbit warren?
Well, it
was lots of steps up and down. It was, there was a green room with a back door.
You went up steps, I thought. Went up 2 or 3 steps to the green room. Was over there.
There was a green room with a kitchen area, and you could walk out of that at the back. There was
but the dressing rooms were terrible.
Well, the dressing rooms were, depended on what production. Like for a small production, there were dressing rooms, but they'd have to curtain off corners and things for where lots of people on stage. You know, at certain times of the year, when the high tide, spring tide, and that sort of thing came, it flooded underneath the stage. Underneath there was floods.
They're old
because the tide used to come up to here.
There are old photos of in the orchestra pit, people in their gumboots playing. Yeah. In those days, every man and their dog smoked, so you'd go out, and I mean there used to be a box with ash in it to put your cigarette in. It was. But there
were 2 ladies who did teas in the intervals for the company.
For the cast,
for the company in the cast. Lovely. They were sisters, I think. They'd bring sandwiches, they'd serve teas, and I mean there were some lovely points about it, but it was nothing like what it's like now.
As a performer, what we have now is just no comparison to how it was before.
But also, it's much more comfortable for the audience now.
Oh, yes.
There was no heating, there was no ventilation in the summer, and it was just a mess backstage, really. But you managed, you know.
I haven't gone away. Any plans to come back to the theatre?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm retired now. I can't read, unfortunately, even I'm very bad eyesight. I'm a very professional audience member. Yes. I have to always sit in the front row because I'd like be nearer even to see their expressions. The last play I was in
was Who Wants to Be 100?
And that was
2009.
Yeah, and that was my last That's all right.
But it was wonderful when a pop-up globe came here,
Oh, that was lovely.
and Judith could sit on the
We
stage.
sat on the stage. It was lovely. And I thought, I'm so at home. I know this is where I belong. I could see and touch them almost. I was so
it was
close. It was
fantastic.
lovely. Yes, that was very special.